Hey, welcome back to the channel, y'all. Been gone for a while, working on this one. Um, Talked to a lot of drivers, uh, new drivers, veteran drivers. Talked to some terminal managers, a couple of dispatchers, kind of get their opinions and thoughts on this. And of course, I'm going to add my opinions and thoughts on it, and we're going to put them on a big old pot and stir it up. Um, ELDs and the inward facing cameras, there's a lot of strong opinions on them. Uh, One of my thoughts on them is that they're tools, uh, just like any tool. They can be used to build or tear down. Uh, they can build trust and protect people, and they can tear morale apart. You know, I've seen that when when my company that I worked at first implemented um, the cameras. There was a few drivers that left because of it. Uh, I don't know. I think that whenever you use them correctly, and they can be used as a coaching tool, and they can be used to protect the driver. Um, and protecting the driver is, that's what a trucking company should want to do, is protect their drivers. Uh, how do we help drivers make it home every day? Every time that they leave, make sure they come home. My rule number one is always don't get dead. Uh, and, this is if I remember correctly, it's the deadliest um, occupation in the United States per capita. The only ones that might be close is military and police, I guess. And they their numbers aren't even close to what truck driver numbers are. I really hated the ELDs when they first come out. I'm old enough to remember running paper logs and loose leaf logs and running double log books and I really hated the ELD at first, and then I realized that after a full real 10-hour break that I didn't realize how much sleep I was missing out on. Um, one of the drivers I asked, he said the ELD gave him something he never had before. He had a hard stop. I could point to it and say, "Hey, I can't do that. I can't go any further." Uh, Manager, he said the argument stopped between dispatch and the driver. The clock made it neutral. They could both look at the clock and say, "No, I can't do that," and the dispatcher would say, "No, he can't do that. So we're not going to dispatch him on that load." Before the ELD, it was, the dispatcher would say, "Hey, this is what I need you to run. Get it done." You know, um, you know, when the system's used correctly, it protects the driver and prevents, unsafe decisions from happening. It's not a punishment; it's protection. ELDs don't accuse drivers of being unsafe. They prevent situations where safety can get compromised in the first place. Um, Here's something that's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. ELDs didn't create the problem like detention and poor appointment time planning and lacking of parking, and they exposed all these things. Uh, I heard a driver say ELDs didn't slow me down. They showed me how slow the customers really were. You know, detention time is huge in the trucking industry. And the shippers and receivers, they usually don't care. Why would they care how long you sit in their docks or, in their unloading facilities? At 5 o'clock, they're going to clock out and go home, Then the next guy on the ship's going to come in and he's not going to care any more than the last guy did. The ELDs didn't create that problem. They just exposed it for what it was. Once the data was visible, uh, there was no pretending anymore. You have a hard 14-hour work day, 11-hour drive time, and that's it. Um, you know, the truth doesn't care about your feelings. It's just the truth. If the clock's tight, fix the planning. Drivers are getting, stuck there at the shippers or receivers, and they're not getting paid. Make sure they're getting paid. The company I work for, they pay detention after 2 hours. So if you want to hold me at your facility for 24 hours, hey, after that first 2 hours, I'm getting paid by the hour. So take your time. Parking's another one that, if you're not in a truck stop by like 5 o'clock anymore, you're not getting a parking spot. One of the things that the company that I work for, excuse me, they helped with that by paying for the paid parking, which is usually the only parking that's left in a truck stop. And that's not surveillance, guys. That's leadership, you know. Uh, and the cameras, when they first came in, I was skeptical, I guess would be a kind word of saying about it. I know we lost some drivers because of the cameras, and my opinion kind of changed on them. When the cameras are used wrong, they can create fear, make people feel untrusted. And at the same time, they're a great tool for teaching, for protection. Uh, driver told me, so the camera told the truth when I couldn't. The person in the four-wheeler did something stupid and they wanted to blame the driver for it. If you know anything, if you're a driver yourself, the truck driver is always in the wrong, according to, the general public. We're big, slow, and in the way. They make accusations and the camera can clear you. You know, that's not discipline. That's justice. You know, we I've heard for years, sitting at the truck driver counter, hey, we need to band together. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to protect ourselves. Like it or not, the cameras are one of the ways that you can do that. You know, don't take my word for it. Look at the evidence. Here, I'll make a call to safety. Safety can send you the video, and you can see exactly what happened. It can prove what didn't happen. Somebody sees that big truck and they see the billboards with the lawyers on the signs, saying, "Hey, hurt by a truck in an accident, I can get you millions." Well, whenever the evidence is indisputable, you just ruined your vehicle or, made yourself out to be a liar. And to me, it's just another layer of protection, As a trainer, one of the reasons I became a trainer because I wanted to change the culture of truck driving. I could see a constant decline in the culture of drivers. We used to be a tight knit community. We took care of each other. You seen one broke down alongside the road, you stopped. I guess cell phones kind of had something to do with that because nobody runs with a CB on anymore, and there's not the trust between the drivers like it used to be. It used to be a fraternity, I guess. Um, One of the things that a driver manager or dispatcher told me, he says, we don't ask why did you mess up. We need to ask what could help next time. In other words, the first response is discipline. You've already failed as a coach, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. If you go straight to you messed up and this is how we're going to spank you, you're not being an effective coach or a leader. You're just being a asshole with a stick, I guess. Um, when the cameras are used for like, your seating position, your following distance, that's a big one for me. Your mirror usage, one of the irritating ones, but it saves lives, is the fatigue recognition. If you're tired, you're tired. You're going to start yawning. You're going to start scratching your head or rubbing your face. The camera's going to recognize that. It's going to give you a warning. Hey, do you need to take a break? You know, it's not about Big Brother. It's a second set of eyes that want you to win. You know, Again, it's more about safety than anything else. It's being, I guess, a shield. Or dare I even say, a guardian angel. A little dude that sits on your shoulder and says, do you really want to do this? I know when I first got into trucking, I was, running balls to the wall, doing literally stupid stuff. I remember one time I left Memphis and I literally woke up somewhere in Minnesota. Had no idea how I got there. And that scared the crap out of me. You know, I I basically came to, I guess, woke up, my brain had shut off, and there was a hot steaming cup of coffee in my cup holder. And I was like, where did that come from? So I walked back to the little gas station because I was just pulled off on a wide spot in the road and said, hey, where am I at? What's the name of this town? And then while I was there, I was like, oh, have you ever heard of this company? Yeah, it's 2 miles down the road. I drove like literally from Memphis, Tennessee to, I think it was Roseau, Minnesota, which is almost to the Canadian line. I got back and I like walked and looked at every inch of the truck and looking for blood splatter or damage. I was scared to death that I might have hit somebody. Fortunately, I didn't, but man, it scared me. Um, and one of the things I hear all the time is drivers feel like they're being watched or they're being judged. I heard guys say, "I don't want a camera to replace trust." Well, it's not replacing trust. It's just there to coach you, make you better, safer. Um, they don't replace trust. They replace assumptions. It's human nature to automatically go to the bad things. Well, driver, you messed up. Well, they can't just assume that it was you that messed up because they have video footage of it now. Uh, our cameras at the company I work for, whenever you set the brake, the inward facing camera goes off. The outward facing camera stays on. And that's helped with drivers getting backed into at truck stops. It's not the driver's fault. And if the camera wasn't there, he wouldn't have a leg to stand on. Yeah, your front fender's smashed up. Well, how did that happen? Happened in the middle of the night. This truck hit me and he just drove off. Without the camera, okay, you sure it wasn't one of those big yellow poles that jump out in front of everybody? Now you have video proof and you have the license plate of the truck and company name on the back of the trailer that ran into you or backed into you. Um, Yeah, without the video, it's a guess, but with the video, it's a fact. And knowing means fewer knee-jerk reactions or fewer false firings. Fewer careers are ruined by hearsay, and that benefits the driver. And I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm back. I guess having problems with this hotel Wi-Fi. Hey, I'm just going to leave this in here so you can see that I'm just being natural. I guess if I was going to go ahead and wrap it up, I guess I would say that overall I changed my opinion with experience and looking at it through a different lens, I guess. Not just looking at it as, well, my company doesn't trust me. They don't, they think I'm just some schlub, to, hey, these guys are actually looking out for me. You know, we have, we've had, I don't know if I can say anything about that. Let me think of an example. Well, I guess I can say we've been sued in the past and we beat the lawsuit because we had video evidence. Um, we've had, several incidences where companies, drivers would trying to park in a spot next to us and hit our truck. And, by the time the driver gets up and around and throws his curtain open, the driver's driving away. And with the camera facing outward, because, like I said earlier, when you set the brake, the inside camera turns off. But we have the license plate, we have the company name, we have the trailer number. In some instances, with a wide shot, you can probably get the truck number too. Um, and that protects the driver because you know there's trust issues, I guess, maybe. You know, did the driver really get run into, or did he hit a pole, that one of those big yellow poles that jump out in front of you? And there's no assumptions anymore. It's just facts. It's video proof. And I guess that's one of the things that changed my mind on them. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Uh, my internet crashed. I lost all my notes, and I can't get back on. And I should have analoged them. Yeah, instead of going the digital route, I should have just wrote it out on paper. I'm going to wrap it up here. Give me your opinions down in the comments. And again, I know it's a highly debated uh, subject. Everybody has opinions on it. Let me hear your opinions. Um, until next time, guys, be a blessing to somebody. Be the reason they're having a good day. I'll catch you on down the road.